Hello and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm previewing a game that is currently on Kickstarter called Winter Rabbit. Winter Rabbit will be on Kickstarter until September 18th. It is a semi-cooperative worker placement game with resource management. The copy I was sent here is a prototype, so the components are not in their final form. I'm going to start with an overview of how the game plays and then give some thoughts on the gameplay. Everyone chooses a character to play as and gains the starting resources listed on the card and 7 task cards, or 11 for a 2-player game. The card also gives an asymmetric ability of being able to use a certain resource as another resource throughout the game. You will gain one of your workers, place one worker on Season 2, and place the rest in the bag. In a 3 or more player game, one worker does not get used. You will also place 3 white rabbit tokens in the bag and 1 on Season 3. At lower player counts, you will also place tokens of an unused player in the bag. Finally, place 4 frozen tokens on Season 4. Each season, the tokens on that season space will be added to the bag. At the beginning of each season, you will choose a task card to play, or 2 task cards for a 2-player game. Your task cards can be fulfilled by other players only, and when they fulfill them by paying the listed resources, they will gain the amount of victory points on the card, while you gain the resources listed here. Fulfilling tasks will also move a track down based on the icon on the task card. Players must work together to ensure that all 3 tracks have reached the end by the end of the game, or else no one can win the game. The first thing you will do on your turn is place out a disc, either one on your player board or drawing a random disc from the bag. You will place the disc face down on an open worker space on the board, and if all of the spaces at that location are now full, then production triggers. You flip all of the face down discs there, and if there are no white rabbits at the location, then everyone gets 1 of that resource plus 1 resource per disc that they have there. If a white rabbit is revealed, then no one gets any resources, and 1 resource per token goes to the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is a special location. When 2 tokens are at the rabbit hole, the players there split the resources at the rabbit hole, with the first player taking a resource, then the second player, and so on until all are gone. Unless a winter rabbit is revealed, then all resources go away and no players get resources. If a standard location is already produced once, then any additional times it produces, those who have a newly revealed token gain 1 resource. If you need to remove a tree in order to place at a location, you can do so and place the tree in a basket. Baskets represent your maximum resources you can hold at a given time. You can gain extra baskets through purchasing some village cards. Now, after placing a disc and potentially gaining resources, then a player does one of the following actions. 1. They place out a second worker. 2. Perform tasks from another player or players. 3. Buys any amount of village cards which gain victory points and powerful ongoing abilities. Or 4. Replants trees that they have taken to their board by paying 1 resource per tree. If this fills a location, then trigger production as normal. After performing one of these actions, a player may either pay 3 resources to tell a story, which is always worth 3 points and either has an instant action or an ongoing action until another ongoing story is placed over it, or they can trade 1 resource for another resource instead of telling a story. When all discs have been placed, the season is over. Players place 1 worker on their board and the rest in the bag. The discs on the new season spot go into the bag as well. Players discard tasks from the previous season and choose new tasks. Play continues with the next player. Season 4 adds frozen tokens. When frozen tokens are revealed, you place them off to the side and draw another token, and when the 4th frozen token is drawn, the game ends at the end of that player's turn. If the 3 tracks have not been completed, then all players lose. If they have all 3 been fulfilled, then the player with the most points wins. Now let's talk about my thoughts on the game, starting with ease of play. I'm not going to say this game is easy to learn at first, as the production rules can be a bit difficult to fully grasp, as there are significant differences between production if there's already a face-up disc versus if it has not produced yet. There are also a lot of different powers in the village cards and story cards displayed by icons, but these can be looked up in the rulebook and are explained well there. Once you get into the game, though, the game flow is pretty easy to get used to. Now let's look at the gameplay itself. As far as the gameplay goes, the worker placement aspect, where you do not gain resources immediately, but rather produce when locations are full, adds an interesting aspect to the game. Also, the fact that everyone gets something even if they don't have a worker there is an interesting aspect of the semi-cooperative nature of this game. Now, the semi-cooperative nature of this game is something I can see some not liking, while others might enjoy it. There is an interesting concept when it comes to the task cards you play, giving others points ranging from 4 to 6 points, and giving you resources when they complete it. On one hand, you might want to use lower point cards to limit others' scoring ability, but the higher points cards often give you better resources as well. You also have to be mindful as rounds go on of the tasks that need to be completed by the group for anyone to even have a chance to win the game. I did find in the games we played that it wasn't really a big concern as to whether the task would be completed by the end of the game, though early on felt like it was going to be tough to pull off. In the 2-player game that we played, it did feel like we might have failed in one, mainly because I only ever had one clothing task myself, which was played in the first season, and we were down to needing 2 clothing tasks to be done going into the final season. And I had to hope my wife had a clothing card to play, and she did, so there was no problem there. While there were ways to help each other out, there was also a potential take that in the placement of the winter rabbit, which made areas not produce if the rabbit was there. But it also just needed to be placed if you pulled it out, and so you had to place it somewhere, and often all options would be equally bad. And then of course you get accused of sabotaging the group, but if you placed it in one of the other places, then you could still get accused of sabotaging the group as well. There just oftentimes were not a good place to put that, and you had to deal with that puzzle, figuring out where to put it. The winter rabbit was certainly frustrating to deal with, but that extra little puzzle there kind of added an extra aspect to the game, figuring out what would least mess you up there. There were some powers that did give you one resource from the rabbit hole when a winter rabbit is revealed, which could at least help mitigate the issues created by the winter rabbit if you bought one of those village cards. The asymmetric starting resources and conversion powers are very basic and work simply to provide some level of direction. You can also purchase other conversion powers along the way with the village cards, as well as powers that allow you to move things or return trees to the board for free or other things that are useful. There is even a 0-point village card that gives you 4 resources, but you must take 2 trees from the board, which are going to clog your board, as well as make it a little bit harder to fill locations in order to produce resources. Gaining several village cards throughout the game really helps you get more done throughout the game, as well as giving you points, but this does need to be balanced with fulfilling tasks for more points and to advance the tracks. And you also have the storytelling, which are easier to fulfill with needing any 3 resources instead of specific resources, and is also an additional action that you can take, whereas you cannot both complete a task and buy village cards in the same turn. Also, you might consider the efficiency of buying as many cards as you can in the village action, because you cannot do that and other actions. You definitely want to try to be efficient in how you gain resources and spend resources in order to complete actions. And ideally, you'll focus on fulfilling tasks that will gain you the most points for the least amount of difficulty in gaining resources. I did find the game takes over 2 hours to play. It is possible some will play the game quicker than this, and maybe even after more familiarity with the game, we could play it quicker ourselves, but probably not a whole lot quicker. You're still looking at least an hour and a half for this game to play. The game also seems like it takes a similar amount of time at all player counts, because you will have more workers each at a lower player count, and the amount goes down as player count increases, leading to a similar number of actions. At 2 players, you all get 1 extra personal worker. At 2 to 3 players, there's an entire extra player's worth of discs in the bag for taking actions. Then everyone just has their disc as well. Now let's talk about the theme for a moment. The theme is about preparing for winter and is based on Native American lore, with the winter rabbit representing a being that is focused on bringing about chaos, similar to Loki in Viking lore, but not being a god in that sense. Now the story cards are a nice thematic touch which give you something to read when you play them. Also, thematically, you are working together for the good of the village, but ultimately whoever does the most for the village gets the honor of being the hero of the village and getting bragging rights for that. Now, just some final thoughts about Winter Rabbit. Winter Rabbit has an interesting theme, some basic asymmetric starting abilities, and does semi-co-op in a way that really doesn't feel too cooperative. Completing tasks from others is in everyone's best interest in order to score points, and the only other major aspect of the cooperation that is necessary is ensuring the right tasks are out towards the end of the game and getting those tasks completed towards the end of the game. As far as gathering resources, placing the white rabbit, and telling various stories go, the focus is going to be on what is in your best interest. In other words, it is primarily a competitive game with a hint of cooperation to ensure that the 3 tracks get fulfilled by the end of the game. The rest of the cooperation is more incidental. When I complete your task, you get a resource. When I tell a story, it affects us all. There is a bit of engine building to the game as you need to obtain village cards in order to store more resources and to have powers that are going to help you be more efficient in getting things done so you can complete more tasks, tell more stories, and gain the most points while working together to move up the tracks before winter comes. The game feels slow to get things done at first, but by the end you find you have plenty of time to get everything done. The ending can come upon you fairly quickly, as is up to chance as to how many turns you'll have in that last round, but if everyone uses their reserve tokens, then there will be at least 1 turn each in the last round, but likely many more because you have to pull out 4 frozen tokens amongst quite a few other tokens being in the bag. But there's always that looming tension that the game could end on any turn that people are drawing from the bag, especially as more tokens have been pulled out. So I encourage you to check out this game over on Kickstarter. I have a link down below in the description. The Kickstarter is running through September 18th. I invite you to check out one of my other videos here and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. Have a great week and keep on gaming.